welcome back to the International Pinnacle Roundtable Talks. And, the first thing that we have to ask is, Ponlo, what obnoxious hero build are pros going to do?
Yes, I'm ready. What obnoxious hero builds
Are pros
gonna do?
That's going to end up being like the pub meta thing, right? Okay, that puppy Veno jungle from 5 years ago still haunts me.
Oh, I actually just played against a Venom jungle like 1 hour ago.
Still exists. Okay, so current meta. What from the current meta is the most obnoxious thing that we'll never get rid of, like that?
Honestly, I don't really know, but I think maybe the most obnoxious might be Tinker. Feels like good Tinker players are still pretty, because Tinker didn't get nerfed and they changed the hero. They buffed the hero quite a bit, so. I mean, the good Tinkers players in pubs that I've seen are not losing. So I think Tinker's gonna be like one of the most obnoxious heroes at TI this year.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about current...
you're always gonna do this by looking at the absence of counters specifically. Like the strongest hero is the hero that's not being played right now, whose counters are also not getting played. So, the fact that we don't really see any like Zeuses or Spectres right now, that's, I'm underwriting what Paulo says here.
I think the fundamental difference now is that he has Tinker as defense matrix, right? So he kind of saves himself from a lot of these counters that used to work. So now the only thing that I've seen that people do is they pick Invoker so that you can tornado the defense matrix. But aside from that, I haven't really seen any like clear answers to the Tinker yet. So we'll see at TI.
So what's in general for people who have the fortunate as not being a Tinker spammer, right? What are the timings for Tinker? When are his power spikes?
I mean, I'm no Tinker spammer, but the general idea is that your lane is pretty decent, then you get your support to stack the Ancients, and then when you max out your laser, you use the Smoke of Deceit and you clear the Ancients, and then you get like a super early dagger. I think it's like 9 minutes usually that you get your dagger, and then you just start fighting on the map at 9 minutes when everyone else is like still begging for food. You come out on the map with a dagger with a level 4 rocket laser, and you just get a few kills here and there, and you start to snowball the game, and you make the game like very unplayable for the enemy. Like all they can do is like, I'm gonna buy Tranquil Boot so when he rockets me, I can live, I guess. That's what they do.
Okay, so like 9 to 11 minute power spike, right, is when Tinker takes over. So outside of standard counters, right, what Kips is saying, Zeus, Spectre, one of the things I want us to think about when we're talking about the meta, Kips, if you're looking at the games right now, right, when you were thinking about your LCQ predictions and everything, what are the general power spike timings, right? Are teams drafting things that are strong from 8 to 12 minutes, or are they drafting in a way where they will get rolled over by a Tinker?
I'm seeing a lot of fast lineups right now. And the thing I was saying, like, right now, like, I'm not a pub meta watcher, right? I think for that kind of stuff, you need to be with Pommel over there. But if I look at the BTS Pro Series that has been played right now, you're looking at fast, you're looking at Undying and Marcy being played a lot of hit points, a lot of run at you capability. So in that regard, like the problem is, of course, that these heroes, Marcy might be decent at catching a Tinker, but a lot of these heroes are definitely more straight up brawlers than heroes that are going to do any lane pushing. And I've seen a bunch of teams losing to not having enough lane push, in fact, which is another point where, if this is going to be the Tinker narrative, then yes, it also looks pretty good for Tinker.
I have a question here, which is just related to that, is that Zeus hasn't really been played very much in pro matches, but it is appearing a huge amount in the pub meta. So maybe I'm kind of interested to know that, because as soon as Pablo said Tinker's annoying, in my head the things I'm thinking about are exactly the same. It's Tinker, it's Spectre and it's Zeus. And I saw Zeus was surprisingly higher. So I'm a little bit interested about this. Why is Zeus not making it in? Is it just a comfort hero for a lot of the players who feel like they have to go to it, or are there certain heroes which are popular specifically in pro matches which make Zeus worse? I'm kind of interested by this dynamic between the two.
I think there are two main points when it comes to Zeus from what I know, which is like not that much. One is that with the removal of the small camp, it's hard for people to pick Zeus because you don't really win your lane, then you have no small camp to farm. So like maybe Dire Zeus is easier to play because on Dire you can farm the two camps in the jungle together. You can pull them together and keep farming it. But if you're Radiant, then you don't have that luxury. So you can't keep up with the enemy mid, because the enemy mid, if it's a Tinker, is gonna farm Ancients. If it's a whatever hero, he's gonna farm big camp. Zeus can't really farm big camp. That's point one. Point two, specifically against Tinker, Zeus doesn't counter Tinker that much anymore because of defense matrix. So when Tinker has maxes out his third spell, he has 320 damage absorbed, right? So when you Wrath, he still can blink, right? So it's not that hard of a counter anymore. You kind of need the Nimbus. You kind of need to have the full Arga on the Zeus to counter the Tinker. But even then, he can blink if you don't chain it well. So it's not great lah, I think.
I think also just to add to that, and this is just coming from my 4K MMR Zeus spammer perspective, I also think that Tinker's peaks are coming in higher. Like he's going to peak much sooner than the Zeus would peak with his itemization, and then he can actually burst the living hell out of you. Like Tinker has so much burst with the way that he's being played after his rework, that as a Zeus it's really difficult to play against that because you're gonna get caught out of position really easily. Tinker's so mobile these days now, and it just makes it really difficult to play. Well, because earlier, before the rework, right, there wasn't really that much threat from the Tinker coming in early on with his itemization even, because you were mostly safe. But now that he's playing, or he has to play so aggressively with his skill build now, Zeus is actually more in threat of actually getting killed, and you have less room to farm, as Paul pointed out. So I think Zeus is actually not really that close of a Tinker count anymore. Like Paul said, when you do have the items, sure, but even then it's like a little bit iffy. And I more definitely look towards like the Spectra. I do think that Clockwork is still a really good Tinker counter, but that has to be played off from like a 4, or I don't even think it works as a 3, but not like a super core position, and then it's like not even like a safe, secure kill either. But yeah, I think like Kips just pointed out, I think there's a big problem is just that a lot of these counters are just not really popular or good in the meta right now, right? If anything, actually, again, as Kips pointed out, a lot of the heroes that are being played sort of support the idea of that Tinker can actually come into play into the current meta right now. Like people want to brawl, people want to push, want to shove lanes. Tinker excels as that. You don't want to fight into a Tinker because suddenly you get lasered all the time.
Noxville, who at TI is Tinker specialist, right? Who are the players that we should be watching for this? You can take a moment to look at that. If you need a second, tell me, because I have another question for Skim.
So the thing is that there's been like certain like evolutions of Tinker players. Like for a long time there were like the greatest possibly of all time is DDZ from Arrow Gaming, and he tanked the ban of the Wrath of Valve. So, I mean, since then, has there really been anyone who's super good? I mean, the old people who were really good at it were like, Dendy played it a bunch, but he's not going to be there.
Excalibur was a really good Tinker player.
Excalibur was really good. Koifa played it quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari played it.
Abed is pretty good too, I think.
I mean, Abed's really good, but I haven't seen him play it in a very long... I mean, Arteezy was also really good at... So Miracle was good. Cuckoo played it. So it's like all of these players you can like exclude for one reason or another. Maybe Abed is good.
Probably Abed, nothing to say.
Oh yeah, nothing to say. Played it in China kind of recently, actually.
I mean, nothing to say is probably the best Tinker right now in competitive. But honestly, I've played with and against like some European and Russian Tinkers, and like some people over there are insane Tinker players. Their rank is not very high, but they're like insane. They are like level 30 Tinkers. I don't think nothing to say is even level 30 Tinker.
And then there's Stormstormer, who's not played it very much, but he has played it recently, and he was pretty good with it. So Yeah, I mean, a hard question. Thanks for that. But
I gotta keep you working, all right? I'm gonna make sure you're not getting too comfortable over there. So moving away just from the Tinker a little bit to talk about general meta, whether pub or pro, because we know that sometimes they will follow each other. Kips, you're saying that it's a brawling meta, and teams are running into issues with actually being able to push towers. And I'm curious, is this brawling meta something that we're seeing across the board? So it's the opposite of TI4 death push, right? Or are we seeing a decent balance from teams, and you're just talking about a few isolated cases where they forget to be able to push?
No, I definitely think that with how divided the regions have been for such a long time now as well, like we talked in the previous episode about how low the match volume is in seasons in general, and that especially goes like double, triple, quadruple for the amount of inter-regional matches. So I actually think that these kind of metas are pretty isolated, and we're going to see a lot of clashes between these metas happen as it is. So definitely, like, the brawly heroes are strong right now, but there's definitely regions, like for example, especially Europe, that just like pushing lanes way more than others.
Hanlo, what do your pubs look like meta-wise? How do you boil that down?
The brawling thing is definitely true, I think, because they made it harder for you to gain levels, I think, but they made kills mean more. I think you get more XP from kills, so people are like a lot more willing to run around and fight. I think like Bounty Hunter is gonna be huge. I've seen a Kataomi and who's the other post 4 player? Kataomi and I forgot who's the other guy, but some people are playing about a lot of Bounty in pubs, and all of them have like 70% win rate with it. Because the hero feels, I mean, I've played it a few times and it feels pretty busted. They've been
for you on that.
Apparently, Anna has been running around playing.
Oh yeah, Anna is like 20 games on BH in the past week.
18, you are correct.
Yeah, 18 games. I stopped him earlier.
Since the last patch in pro matches, Bounty Hunter is 0-4.
Yes.
The only reason I know this is I saw that Drow Ranger was 0-10. And part of me was really happy about that.
Drow is actually strong now, though. Like, a lot of people are playing Drow.
So the reason I saw this, I was looking at like pubs versus pros, pro matches, and it's obviously a different group of players playing because most of the teams are boot camping, and it's like kind of like the tier below that are playing pro matches. But I was really surprised by that difference for Drow Ranger. Such a huge difference in win rate.
So in pubs, Bounty Hunter actually has a sub 50% win rate in the low MMR, and you have to get up to the high MMR brackets to get over 50% win rate.
It's 52.7% in the sample I've seen of 7.5K matches or above. So that's pretty decent.
Yeah. But interesting that it's losing in pro. I'm curious what it's against.
It's also I think people just haven't figured out how to play in any other role other than offlane yet. Like the only Bounty Hunter in pro matches is the offlane. So the offlane win rate is pretty high in pubs. But when you play in other positions, people don't really know what they're doing. And the win rate is kind of low. But I think once like we hit TI and Kataomi shows off his Bounty Hunter, then I think it's gonna become like one of the staples of, because it's just a hero that you can flex and it kind of provides something valuable every game. And to counter the hero is like you need something very specific, which is like dispelling the track. You need to literally pick hero to dispel track to counter the hero, and that feels kind of bad because heroes that dispel track are weak against Bounty in lane. I think like if you think of heroes like Abaddon, Omni Knight, like these heroes don't do well against Bounty in lane. If you are talking about like pos 5 versus pos 4, like trading wise, so it's quite unnatural to counter the hero, I think. So you can just like first phase a hero. Like all these heroes that are like easy to first phase are the most obnoxious heroes in tournaments because it's just hard to deal with, and you have to spend so much of your drafting dealing with a hero that you can't really draft your own comfort of your own lineup. Yeah,
it's like Batrider in the past when Batrider was really strong. It's like if you let them pick Batrider, you have to find a way to remove the sticky napalm stacks, or you have to have bench swap to swap the ultimates. Like, there's too many things you have to deal with.
Yeah, Bad's still pretty strong now, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true, but it's not as strong as it was when it was like 100% pick ban rates.
Mm.
These are also the types of heroes that sort of like dictate the dynamic of the game in a lot of ways, right? Because they can dictate the pace and they can sort of like change the way you need to approach the game. Because be it Bad Rider, Bounty Hunter, there's a variety of heroes like Storm Spirit. These are kind of heroes that you have to, especially in the support position as well, then you have to really change the way you approach the game, because suddenly you're playing a completely different map control type of game and you have to be alert. And I don't know, I mean, Pono, you can tell me if you feel any different, but obviously from a pub perspective, it just feels like you have to just change your mentality when you face these type of heroes, especially when you know that on the other side it's somebody that actually knows how to play the hero as well, right?
I think when it comes to the Invis heroes, especially, like I've seen some post 4 Rikis too. The Europeans like it, especially when it comes to these kind of heroes and Nyx Assassin. Like, it just causes you to have to play the whole game with 20-30% of your brain thinking about this guy. You can't not stop thinking about the guy. You're making moves, you're trying to coordinate a smoke, you're trying to look at who has TP on your team, you want to push waves, you want to TP back and make a smoke on the move, and the whole time, this Nyx could have just been at one of the side lanes, and he sees your calls, TPs away. And then suddenly they know what you're trying to do, You have to play the game so cleanly around these Invis heroes to like have the surprise element. That's why it's like, I think when these Invis players play well, it's like super hard to deal with the hero concept. And like you run out of sentries and shit. Like, so
yeah, when they limited the sentry number, that's when Invis heroes started being annoying again.
Like as a support, you spend like 5 sentries, your whole map, and then you lose one fight cause like someone messes up, right? You lose a fight, and then suddenly you just can't play the rest of the map because you just don't have enough sentries. So you just have to like buy gem and stick together for the whole game.
Yeah, I feel that one. So we had a recent patch, and we've sort of been referencing it here and there with some of what we're talking about. So for reference, the only change in the patch update was that Bounty Hunter got 3 base damage added to him, right? But we're talking about how his hero counters in lane don't want to lane against him, and that 3 base damage obviously makes that so much worse. What are some of the other from this like little mini patch that has sort of shifted the meta? So Enigma got a little bit of nerf. Silencer got what I consider a great buff. Undying got knocked down a little bit, right? Like how are we gonna see things shift from this recent patch?
My impression is that the range offlaners are weaker, like the DP, Enigma, and Visage, mainly these 3, I think. They're definitely weaker. So I think it's about when your enemy picks a melee 4, because the range post 4s to me feels pretty weak too, like the Rubiks, the Skywrath Mages, the Snapfires, the Dark Willows, like all the range position 4s feel pretty weak. So I think we're gonna have a meta where oftentimes you're gonna get double melee in your offlane. So I think the carry players that can abuse that with their pick and have complete free farm and snowball the game and kill the offlaner again and again, I think those are I feel like that's what's gonna happen, at least in the LCQ. Yeah. Probably you're gonna see some like a lot of Ursas for carry so that you can pressure the enemy offlane a lot.
Slark.
If they draft like that. Yeah, Slark is pretty strong as well right now.
A lot of
Heal also got a buff there too. Yeah, what was that, Noxville?
A lot of the changes that you see are also not just based on the game changing, they're just meta game shifts. So people are learning how to do something or how to deal with something in a specific way. And maybe as there was like an example that was like the Visage that was said, like people are finding ways to just deal with the hero as a concept. But maybe this ties back a little bit to how this episode started, which was one of the most frustrating heroes. And there's always a couple of heroes which have that potential, like Lycan and Naga Siren. Those heroes are being picked not super frequently, but a reasonable amount. and they are very high at the top of the frustrating heroes list. They are very high at close to the top of the win rates in terms of pub meta. I'm kind of interested to hear more perspective on them. They're even higher than Tinker in terms of these win rates. So I'm a little bit interested to see how those transfer from a pub meta to a pro meta. Are they still as strong, or do they flourish in the chaos that is a pub, where it can be very frustrating to deal with these type of heroes?
Do you wanna?
Well, you go first. I'll go second.
Yeah. Okay. So the hero that I have the most opinions on from these two is the Naga Siren, because I work with Galv a ton, right, Miracle? And the biggest thing that I learned from him about the Naga Siren is that you can take over the entire game. You can rule the entire game. You should rule the entire game, but you can't ever finish it. Somebody else needs to do that. And in order to actually like win with the Naga Siren, I feel like even if the hero is good, because of your limited siege potential, because of your like the fact that you don't offer any burst, for example, the fact that you're so reliant on harassing supports out of the fights, that sort of thing, you either need to have a counter carry matchup, or you need to have somebody else on your lineup who can make use of all of that, well, the fact that the waves have been pushed in, scrape together the farm that you have not been taking, and win anyway. So Naga feels very specific to the kind of games that you're actually playing. Like the hero matchups need to be there. And I don't think a Lycan has those same restrictions at all.
I was going to say that.
Lycan. Yeah, skip.
Sorry, no, I was going to say that I guess I shouldn't mention that I've worked for Dota before, and I did, and part of my job was actually just keeping up with all these trends also in the pop game, in the pop meta, for content. And one of the most notable things was that heroes like Lycan and like Naga Siren actually, for years, they would still be at the top actually in terms of pubs win percentages, because they are. Everything that Kips and everything you guys have been saying about these heroes is completely correct. But at the end of the day, in pubs, nobody plays perfect. So it's still possible to exploit with these types of heroes, right? And that, unfortunately, and this is, I guess, what you were referring to, Ben, doesn't necessarily translate to the pro experience, right? Yeah, you can dominate with these heroes in pub games, but like Kips mentioned, it's so difficult to actually close it out, especially with the Naga Siren, and that's going to be heavily punished in a pro game versus pub games. So it's like whatever. I will say though that I think both have a lot of potential, and perhaps Lycan more so than Naga Siren for me, to actually be like those niche picks that make it into a team sort of like arsenal of drafts, because Lycan can enable, and we've seen that with his new, or well, I guess it's not new anymore, but with his Aghanim's can enable other cores so much for like really these nasty combos. Like I think the Tiny was one of the favorite combos last year at TI. So I think that's definitely something that maybe not as often as we saw as we've seen last year, especially because it's been figured out. But I do think it's going to pop up a couple of times here and there, because it can be. It's one of these things. You want to have these types of heroes in your arsenal, like the Broodmothers, the Arc Wardens, the heroes that when the draft gives you that opportunity to just put it in there at the 4th, 5th pick, you're going to take it, and then it's going to be an almost auto win. And I think Lycan especially is one of those heroes nowadays that it's not a must pick right now, but if the opportunity is there, it's probably going to be an easy win for you.
Previous TIs, we've seen this micro meta evolve, right? We see it at majors, we see it at TI. I'm thinking of Lcq at the CDEC run, right? TI5. I'm thinking of that Death Prophet, Death Ball, TI4. This TI is longer, right? If a team pulls out and exploits a Lycan, and forbid a Broodmother, or any of those things early on, right? Teams have time to actually counter and train and figure out what works. So how much do we think we're going to see the meta evolve at this TI, since it's so different from past ones?
It's going to evolve more.
It's a very interesting one. Like, for my part, I think that will actually, and I think saving strats is mostly a myth, because you should use it before somebody else uses it. But if you're part of, let's say, the top 10 elite teams in the world, and you have an idea about this game that is much more sophisticated than everybody below that, and those teams are there. There's just a bunch of teams that are on like a completely different level with how they think about the game. then we might actually see proper strat saving at this TI. And, you know, maybe a lower tier team is going to ruin it by just picking the hero because they like it. But then everybody's going to do it that was holding it back, you know. But we might actually see teams hold on to it and save it for the later phases.
I was just gonna say we're gonna see more evolutions, but there's not gonna be any patches. So when it comes to the strength, the raw strength,
Isn't there?
Hang on, Noxville. Hang on. Are you sure you can confirm that? That seems risky.
Well, maybe that's why they put a week between the finals or like the playoffs and the finals, is they can just make some changes. But if they did that, wow, Dream League would.
New patch, guys. Ember got nerfed.
New patch. All the heroes that the team that is the favorite coming in have got nerfed. Yeah, so if there's no patches, which I'm really hoping there won't be, fundamentally I think it's like the stronger heroes are going to remain strong in terms of raw strength as opposed to surprise strength. Lcq is a good example. It was a strong hero in so many ways, but there was a player that wasn't able to play it, and EG were able to work it out. That's the kind of thing which you'll see more of in this type of context. Every single hero, there's enough time that you'll be able to do way more research in terms of these players can't play these heroes or don't have this much experience doing it in this way. So you'll see that, but the true strength of the heroes will also shine through more. So I think what you'll see is more interesting banning, as in less boring banning, where coming into every match, it's always the same heroes banned. I think we'll see more like uniqueness in this regard. But I think there's also going to be quite a lot of diversity as a result, because people are going to come in with their own ideas, and they're going to be willing to experiment because they're going to feel like they have more time to adapt. Remember previous TIs, every team tries to like either converge into like the common meta, or they try create their own strategy to beat the meta. And nothing is a better example of this than TI4, where almost all the teams went into one strategy except for Vici and Newbie, who copied them. So I think that this could be something similar in that, where you'll have more uniqueness and then convergence of metas.
Ponlo, I saw your face light up when, we said mid-TI patch. But you definitely had patches hit while you're at boot camp, right? Like you've prepared for a tournament, and then it's like, ha, welcome to a patch. What's the team energy when that happens? What's the Discord chat look like?
I mean, funny story. In my previous team, which was Fusion, I was this was a roster with God King and Flyby and White Album and XCJ. We were actually doing really well in scrims. I was playing this Enigma 4. I learned it from Tiger, and none of the Chinese teams knew how to play it and play against it. This was like pre-nerf Enigma, like pre-nerf. This was like 3 patches ago. It was like busted as shit, right? I was beating like everyone in China with it. I was first picking and beating everyone. I even beat LGD with Enigma game 1 in scrim, and then game 2 they banned it. Like every team was the same ratio. Game 1 I play it, we win. Game 2 they ban, and then we lose. And then 1 week before the qualifiers, right? Oh no, 1 week before the DPC or something, I forgot while we were playing, there was a patch, and it nerfed Chaos Knight, it nerfed DP, it nerfed Enigma, it nerfed like all our bread and butter that we were good at, and we just couldn't find. We just couldn't improve fast enough in time. Like the heroes that became good were just not in like my teammates like arsenal of heroes. So it just became we just dropped off like so much. We went from like potentially being top 4 in China, like honestly, like generally from the bottom of my head, no cap, no copium. We went from that to like bottom of Div 2. That was how big the range is when it comes to like hero comfort, how much it can do for a team. So to answer your question, like I would say if your team is doing well, then you are damn scared of a patch. And if your team is not doing well, then if your teammates are the kind of players that they grind pubs a lot, they play like 20 games a day and they can play a lot of different things, then you are more confident that within a week you're gonna find certain things and you're gonna find it faster than other teams. And your core players, especially your core players, they're gonna find their mojo, their groove of the patch. Like, I just want to play like this hero I can own. Like, just give me this item I can own. You need that kind of confidence from your core players. Then like you can rise like really quickly, I think.
So Skim, go ahead, Noxville.
I was just gonna say that the best example of that ever was TI6 BC. They had one of the best Mirana players, and they had one of the best Timbersaw players. Like Moo had like a hero pool of like 3 heroes, which he was amazing on, and those would like happen to be the meta heroes coming into the events. And Mirana was like one of Weeha's best heroes, and that was you can get really lucky, or you can just be super. I mean, they're not bad, but it's like you can be lucky or you can be good, and they were both.
I would imagine this TI format punishes hero puddles just because of the study time. Skim, when we look at the players at TI in the LCQ, looking at the whole thing, the impression that I've often got is some of the older players play a lot less pub, right? They don't grind the same way that they used to. So, and with this patch being so recent, do you think that some of the like legacy players might struggle at TI because there's been a patch so close? Or you think because they're legacy, they've already got 50,000 hours of Dota and they'll figure it out?
I think it's mostly the latter. I think a lot of the reason that despite being, I guess, legacy or so old, despite being so old, they're still at TI. It's just sort of like prove that the way they approach Dota is obviously different from, let's say, somebody like Ponmo who grinds every day.
Ouch.
It's not even an insult. You're just younger.
Calling me noob?
Well, yeah, actually. So it might be a different mindset, it might be a different approach, but at the end of the day, it still kind of works. And I think for them, it's just a difference of like experience taking in these patches and taking in Dota. They don't necessarily need to grind it out as versus just sort of like trying to understand it on more like of a theoretical and also like a team level, right? I think at the end of the day, regardless of what the patch is like, if your team has a good cohesion and has a healthy approach to sort of like the way you want to play the game, the way you approach the game, but also sort of like any problem that you tackle on, if that's a healthy approach, it kind of doesn't matter what patch is coming. Yeah, obviously, it's going to make a difference at a super, super high degree and probably like a top 2 matchup. It's definitely going to make a difference. We've seen it in the past before with, I think the best example is probably CDC, where they were unable to deal with... Lina, the Shrek? I forgot which
No,
way it was.
they picked EG's strategy was to give them Leshrac, and they couldn't play it because everybody had banned it all tournament. So EG just picked like Elder Titan AA, and then just wombo combo Roche fights, and just CDEC fell over because they had no idea what they were doing with Lesh.
That's like the best example of that, though, right? The fact that patch tested, or even despite not being able to play the hero, they still made it to the finals. Goes to show that there's a lot of other things that can make up for a lack of sort of like patch awareness, I guess is what I'm putting it at. So even if you don't feel comfortable in the most super meta heroes, you can still make it really, really far. And I think that's what sort of like a lot of these top players have proven. Like, I'm going to take Puppy as an example. I still think he's a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, but he's not exactly excelling on a lot of the heroes that he's playing for the team. And on an individual level, he has a definitely strong hero pool, don't get me wrong, but there's some heroes that he plays that I think you can visibly tell that he's not super comfortable on, but he still makes it work for the rest of his team. It's just one example. There's a couple other players like it. So I feel like, yeah, sure, they might be not as grindy as some of the other players, but they can make up for it in a lot of other ways that other players are still aspiring for.
They can make up for it if they're willing to. I think one of the challenges of legacy captains is that, oh, this patch didn't change that much, or, oh, we're so good, this will still work. Totally not mentioning anyone specific there whatsoever. That definitely wasn't targeted, no.
Remember also that secrets are in they're making these like almost last second changes. Like the fact that Puppy has played Rubik for the first time in like almost 4 years, is because he had Yapsol with him for such a long time. But he is also doing weird stuff. You're totally right. Like, he's playing Centaur. He's playing, like, Tree. I mean, these are heroes which are not unconventional, but it's just not the kind of thing that you would normally associate with him. So I think he's become more flexible in his old age, because he understands that him having a good game isn't what is needed to win. It's more like he needs to have a game, and he needs to be there for the leadership more than anything else.
Yeah, and it's very hard to provide leadership if you don't have a game. Like, that's one of the things that captains definitely pushed back to me on. I was like, all right, you should just play what you're comfortable with because we need you on, like, we need your comms most of all. And they're like, well, but my comms are not going to be good if I'm not doing well in the game, even if I'm on a hero that I know that like the back of my hand. So it does come in at some point. And the other comment that I want to make about this is that, legacy players can make up for things, but you can't have too many on your team. I honestly think that, especially with the patch being so close, a lot of adaptation being required, two old boys might be your max for a good finish. And I'd really rather see that you have one on the field, because everybody else is going to have, 4 hungry new guys, or in case of a lot of teams that have been doing really well this year, 5. And at some point, your experience can't make up for just the sheer amount of games these guys play.
See, Ponlo, Skim was giving you the biggest compliment ever by saying you were one of the new guys. That means, you're destined to win. You've got what it takes. See, there you go. Look at that.
I was thinking about this thing that I'm not sure if I can say it. So you guys remember when Sumail was playing in Secret, right? And you guys remember when Ice was playing the team, right?
Oh, here we go. SCA leaks. Here we go.
No. It's not SCA leak. And you guys remember when Ice played like some Lina offlane, right?
Vaguely.
And you guys remember that they were winning the game and then they lost, right? And then Sumail and then after that, 2 days later, Sumail started drafting for Secret. Remember that?
No.
I'm sort of
yes.
Yeah, he did. He started drafting for Secret. I'm sort of like, I wonder what went behind the scenes in Enigma, because I think I from what I know or what I heard, sort of, Sumail is someone that like he has a strong opinion on picks, because he understands the game. He's not like a turn off brain play Dota kind of guy like we are. But so Sumail has an expectation of what he wants a lineup to have. Then he goes to Enigma, and Kuroki is like, he goes in an interview and he just like, who was it that did the interview and then got a lot of flack for it, because he was like, why do you pick no stunts? And then Kuro was like, don't talk to me, you mere mortal, you don't understand. Dota is a beautiful game, don't be close-minded, something like that. Right? I wonder how Kuro in that mindset versus Sumail playing that team, and how did that go down? I really wonder, like, did Sumail try to take over or like have a lot of input in the draft, and then when they lost, like, how does he feel? Because end of the day, it's not that Enigma played bad, right? I don't think they played like very bad, but
they just played unconventionally.
That's the old boys thing, right? Sumail,
it's like
not being very old, counts as old boy at this stage, right? Because that was what, DAC 2015 was Sumail rise to power. So yeah, definitely old boy stage.
I think it was Jenkins who got told about the like Dota's a beautiful game, don't tell me how to draft.
Was it Jenkins?
It was Jenkins, or it was like Jenkins or Nomad.
It was. Like, I think it was Nomad. No.
Yeah.
I think it was Nomad. It was Nomad.
It was like something like, it was basically the most subtle way of don't tell me how to draft, kid. But it was brilliant.
No, I find it so. It like, on one hand he's saying, Kuro was saying like, Dota is a beautiful game, you gotta be open-minded, right? And then on the other hand, I feel like he's the one that's being close-minded in a way, because he's been drafting like this for so long, while everyone shifts in another direction, the meta shifts. You see the OG kids playing like a whole different kind of Dota this year, and Nigma just still wanna do things their way. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm at a point of my career where I choose not to believe that there are any like pure geniuses of Dota anymore. I'm not gonna put anyone on that pedestal anymore. I used to do that, and now as a player, I feel like I don't. I think everything is like within reach, and everything can be learned, and there are no pure genius. There's no Kuro is so smart that no matter what he does, he's gonna win. Puppy is not like, none of them are like that. That's why Puppy loses, you know. Even though he's so good, right? He still plays Centaur 5 and no one else does it. And it's like not theoretically good, right? And it's not like he owns, he just does okay, you know. Like everyone just sort of has their thing and they just try to win, and if they win then it justifies it. It's just as simple as that. And if they lose then they suck.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, that's something that like OpenAI kind of showed everyone is everyone had these ideas on how to play, and they had all these like strong opinions and like these kind of rules that they developed in their heads over time, and then they played against like some bots and they got destroyed. So yeah, I mean the best in the world got utterly destroyed, and the way in which OpenAI was playing was fundamentally different. There were different things it did. It bought back early. It learned how to like.
Very regen. Varying regen was like the biggest thing OpenAI changed. I think that's the reason that there's 5 couriers now. Yeah, is OpenAI.
Yeah, so there's fundamentally so much that changed within our perception of the game. Same with chess, when computers got better at humans at chess, and you were able to like analyze complex decisions. If we're gonna look back at Dota 2 as it is now in 10 years' time, we'll think that everyone playing now is a newbie. And that's the only reason that we have respect for some of the old players, is because they've grown and they've adapted throughout the ages, and they're still relevant. And that's why we have respect for Xiaowei, Puppy, FY, and I mean No-Tail as well. I mean, they were playing Han for a lot before, since till Tier 2, but they've adapted throughout the ages. Like all of these old school players have learned to adapt, and that's kind of the most important thing in the longevity of Dota 2 is constant adaptation.
Yep. I think it's a bit like the old thing that, you know, Seinfeld is unfunny now because everybody knows what the jokes are going to be. But that's because the jokes were so good that if you don't make those now, you're not even a comedy. And the same goes for like if I watch Liquid at TI7, for example, like the kind of map play that they do was revolutionary back then. And I remember looking at it and thinking like, how is it possible to play against this? And then you look at the metagame now, and just most top teams play like that now intrinsically, and they have a bunch of other stuff on top on their map movement. It's just become a part of the makeup of the pro scene now.
If you look back in like TI3, Mushi didn't even trade switch. And they're like, Mushi, why don't you trade switch? And he's like, no, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to waste time thinking about it. So,
this isn't just TI3, Noxville. I remember watching like 2016, sitting with Charlie Yang with one of his players or whatever, and he wasn't trade swapping. I looked at him and I was like, what is happening? He's like, I don't know. I don't get it. And I'm just like, I thought carry players were supposed to be max efficient. It took a long time for efficiency to like actually mean not just getting the last hit.
Yeah.
There's so many things with that. So I wanna round out this episode by drilling in on the heroes that we think we're gonna see at TI. So Skim, I want you to pick the lane that you think is the most influential in the meta right now, and give me 3 big heroes for it. And yes, I put you on the spot, and I am not on the spot, which is a great position to be in.
I think offlane, if I had to choose one, if any, because I think the 3 and the 4 position will or has changed probably the most, and it probably will have a lot of impact. And I think also some of the heroes that are going to have the biggest impact are going to be played in that lane, most notably probably Marcy. I guess actually Undying could be on the safe lane also, but Undying, I think those 2 heroes are going to be 2 heroes that I think we're going to see a lot of, certainly at least in the last chance qualifiers. Can't really think.
You're going last, Noxville. Control yourself.
Can't think of a third, so I'm going to just leave it open for now.
Okay.
Wow.
Kips, give us a different lane and tell us the top meta heroes in that lane.
I was going to do that anyway because I do think, I mean, it's going to be the same lane, the same lane, but on the other side, which is the safe lane. I think that specifically the carry players that know how to strike the balance best between joining and backing out again are going to be the big deal, because we're going to see play like we've seen in the past couple of months over both flanks and the mid joining either one of those. So the easiest tip here is Slark.
Yeah.
Slark is big, will remain big. Next to that, feeling cheeky, gonna say Lone Druid. We're gonna see a bunch of bears in important matches. Not all matches, but definitely in the ones that matter. And then last but not least, I mean, we have so much diversity on the safe lane right now. So let's say the Morphling. Morphling looks like he's in a really good place right now.
So Morphling, Lone Druid, Slark in the safe lane. Undying and Marcy in, I guess really you're focusing on the 4 position there, Skim. They can be offlaners, right? But that's more of a 4 pick.
Pretty much. I actually thought of a third hero. I just looked at Brewmaster. I think Brewmaster is pretty strong. I think the Brewling, the new Aghanims, is... I still think a little bit underrated, or maybe I'm overrating it. I'm not 100% sure, but
I think it's shit.
Noxville's out there. All right, Ponlo.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, you can
Not
give
bad.
us your Brewmaster thoughts, and then you got to break down the mid lane heroes.
I was unmuted. Oops.
I, regardless of what this random guy that's sitting over there thinks, I do think it has very sort of like niche pick potential, because again, I think it's really strong. Having the control with a Storm Panda throughout the entire game feels really strong to me.
All right, Ponlo. Mid heroes. Tinker. Who else? Who's dominating the TI picks in the mid lane?
Tinker, Lash for sure. Lash is gonna be like straight up one of the most picked heroes, I think.
Yeah.
Because of the new Bloodstone. And because a lot of carry players are turning on their brains and like playing different heroes now, because they see pure and shit, and they're like, holy shit, I don't have to play terribly every game. So
also a good Slark hunter.
Yeah, true. A big slug counter. I mean, actually, I heard Milan is like some expert slug, right? I don't know. I mean, I heard on GOG stream that Milan is like, you guys think Flash is a slug counter? Fools. So I don't know. Maybe.
Crystal Maiden with a Glimmer Cape is a slug counter. Thank you. my goal here is to make Ponlo make weird faces, and I'm doing great. Anyway.
I think probably the staples are still gonna be there, like the Invoker Ember, and Void still gonna be there, Pango still gonna be there, Puck is still gonna be there. Yeah, so probably Tinker Lash and maybe SF. I think SF is gonna be picked really like easily because it can be flex on carry, right? And now the new Reyes is so much threat, so much kill potential in lane. Even on mid, like even now, like few days ago, I see Armel like getting solo killed by, I don't know, some guys SF. I don't remember who it was, some TI player. Like even now, even though it has been like quite a while, like 3 weeks or a month since this new SF has been revealed, right? People are still dying to it because it just feels a bit broken, I think, the kill potential on it. So
one of these subtle changes. It's one of these subtle changes that make it really difficult to adapt to, because it's not really super visible, and turn rate already is like such a weird mechanic that it's really difficult. Like changing turn rate by like 0.1 already changes the way you play a hero. It's just so weird. It's like such a weird mechanic that it makes it really difficult to adapt to.
And play against a hero. Like you can't.
Yeah, you need to have the feeling of the cooldown, you know? Like, like sometimes you have 1 or 2 stacks on you, and like 1 stack of race on you, and you're like, you know, it's fine, it's whatever. And then the guy walks up and he uses his second race, and then he uses his first race, and then his third race comes off CD. Like it's just like muscle memory of the matchup.
Yeah. It was like when we had the mass status, when status resist was tied to strength, so you could no longer predict timings for anything. Stuff like that is so hard. All right, Noxville, you've been so patient. All right.
Would I have to choose the lane, or can I just repeat?
No. This is why you go last. We did the other 3 lanes. Now it's your turn to just
Give us
Throw
the
it on.
jungle.
Wait, so do I get a Nahaz mono soapbox moment? No,
I can put you on a timer if you want.
No, I won't be on a timer. So I just have to ask, don't we think that at least Undying and Marcy are going to get banned so much that they won't get picked enough? So, like, in terms of getting picked, it's like, you have to be good, but not too good that you get banned consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, at least with Undying for a while, I don't know how much nerfs and shifts and adjustments have made, but Undying and Marcy were getting banned in like 2/3 to like 60% of the games at least. So maybe they won't be too good. I like the SF pick, that was good. I like the Morphling. What about Faceless Void and Pudge? Are they gonna be good? I mean, they are picked a huge amounts. They seem strong. I think they'll still be there. So those were not mentioned. Slark, what about Lena as a mid laner? Such a strong laner, able to basically play against anything, and you can flex it and play the support if there's a super good counter picked against it.
She's so fragile.
I'm getting nods from Ponlo. I know I'm right. Here we go with the
The Lena stack change with Fiery Souls made mid a completely different experience. I know everyone said it was a nerf if you're playing her in other places or certain parts in the game, but because of Brawl, because of the brawling nature of the game and not farming, those stack changes can be super effective on Lena.
No, so the difference when it comes to Lena now is that I think you have to pick something that can lane the Lena, because you don't have. So what mid laners used to do, they just pick some Ember. They see Lena, they pick Ember. They just sort of get by. Then they just farm the small camp, and then they get the bottle, and then they just play for bounty rune. They ask for a refill, but you have no small camp anymore. So in order to get to the bottle, you need to have a playable matchup against the Lena. I think that's where the Lena can shine. And if the Lena can't do that, then the Lena can flex the safe lane. I've seen 23 Savage play the safe lane Lena a lot in the past few months. So there's definitely potential for the hero to be quite hot this TI, I think.
Okay, and then carrying on my little monologue, Rubik, I think will be something picked. And the reason for this, yeah. So the thing is, I think that if Enigma will still be good, but won't be banned as much, so people need counters for Enigma. And Rubik is always one of the ones that are regarded as good, whether or not it's good. You know, some games it is good, some games that people think it's good and it's awful. So I like Rubik as a stopgap. Also like Silencer, is a hero which is coming up a lot, very strong, possibly, when the compendium is a little bit later on, but I think that by the time we get to compendium episode and we start, or articles, and we start thinking about, which is going to be the hero with the best win rates and it has to be picked 10 or more times, it could be something like Silencer which goes in there, because you pick it in a certain game as last pick or second to last pick, but what this last chance qualifier will give us is an opportunity to see if it's good enough to be picked early. And if it's picked early, then we're not going to be able to choose it as the last pick gotcha. Batrider. Batrider, Tusk, Primal Beast were the other three kind of heroes that I thought maybe are things that would be interesting to bring up, along with Tiny. Tiny was one of those heroes that was the most picked or banned for a long time. It's been nerfed and adjusted in certain ways, and it's no longer getting picked as much, but it's still picked a lot. Just not tier S tier, it's A tier or A minus tier. And then I just wanted to comment on the Tinker. The reason I disagree with the Tinker getting picked a lot is just that I think you have to have a specific Tinker player, and it's a very specific hero to, like we were talking about this earlier. You have to have a player who knows how to play it. And I don't know if each team has a player that can play it, and the teams that do, you'll ban it. So I think it's going to get relegated as it'll appear, let's say, in 1 in every 15 games or something in the last chance qualifiers. But that's whatever, that's 3 or 4 games. And the Lone Druid, I think, will be excellent when it does come out. The Brewmaster, I don't think is going to get picked soon. So that's my feedback for you. No, I'm just kidding. I think it'll get picked a little bit, but it's one of those heroes that if you have a player who can play it, it's devastating. So it might just come up as a recurring like pocket pick that people always forget about. Like a lot of there's a lot of teams with older players, and those older players all have someone who can play the Brewmaster.
So TI Classics that I haven't TI Classics that I haven't heard mentioned very much, right? But always seem to show up. Darkseer.
Yeah. Okay.
Always shows up. You never know why it's coming, right? Darkseer, Clockwork, or a Shaker. Those three, you can't get rid of them. They're always there, but not something any of us have mentioned.
I mean, Clock is one of those heroes that your captain goes, he does the Kuro, you know what's the Kuro? I just want to pick Clockwork and we go from there.
I think Earthshaker will be picked.
Yeah, I think Shaker will be picked. Yeah.
I don't think Darkseer will be picked too much. Haven't really been seeing that much at all, I guess.
That happens every year, though. There's like no Darkseer, no Batrider, no Clockwork for 6 months before TI. You get to TI and suddenly it's just everywhere. So
same with IO. Same with IO if you think about the past.
Yeah, but there's no Kuro.
We're only gonna see. I think we're only gonna see Darkseer if on like the 18 or 24 pick, the later picks, if people show like Lina, Drow, and Sniper and TA, like for all these heroes, which are pretty popular heroes. I think that's the scenario we'll see here.
There's only one other hero which I think is worth maybe discussing that hasn't been mentioned, and that's Beastmaster. Is that hero gonna get picked at all anymore?
Yeah.
Yes. Beastmaster will always be picked, I think.
And then I guess
piercing disables will always be picked.
And then I guess if you want to be complete, Terrorblade's like a kind of one of those heroes that you have to have a counter to, or you have to win early. It's a very strong hero in many regards, and these teams, it's the kind of hero that if you have a strong carry player, he will be able to actually hard carry, which is quite rare in Dota at the moment. In the past, if you had a certain hero that got strong, anti-mage, Spectre, the game's over. Whereas in the last couple of years, that's not really the case. You get these strong heroes. There's always ways to play around it, to be able to handle or control that one hero.
I think where the TB will not be picked as much this TI is because I feel like in the past big tournaments, TB was always the answer to Morph very often. But because the Morph now has the Aga, right, which steals the attack speed and the main stat, like Morph isn't even scared of TB anymore. So I feel like there's just gonna be very few scenarios that TB is gonna be like, oh, I want to pick TB, like it's good here. Like even Drow is good against TB. TB was more picked against heroes like Chaos Knight when Chaos Knight was super meta, and Alchemist when Alchemist was very meta. All of those heroes, I think.
Aura carrying teams as well, where you just steal the auras for free. Very strong. So TB has been played in the last 220 games or something, so the last week of pro matches, and it's only won 9 of the 27 games.
Yeah.
So it's a small sample, very, very small sample. Team quality not at the level that we're talking about, but still, it's these are professional matches. These are very good players playing in a competitive setting, and TB's kind of getting dunked on a little bit.
I have one more hero that I want to bring up, and it's Shadow Demon. Shadow Demon happens during a lot of TIs. I think we haven't really seen it be tested yet at all, but it's a great save, it's a great anti-carry, and I feel like it's sort of overlooked right now.
You know why? Because it's not fun. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's because it's not fun.
That happens, right? When they have to overbuff the Vipers and the Wraith Kings of this planet because otherwise nobody plays it. Yeah, I can see that with Shadow Demon for sure.
And then you need some kid that just really wants to win, and he plays 20 games a day called ATF, and then he's like, I wanna play I'm inspired to play Huskar Viper Raids every game.
Yeah.
And then the world does his bidding.
There's 2 teams which have a Shadow Demon player in the last chance qualifiers. It's Husky and AU. Both of them have played it in a professional match. So, like in the last short while, like last so many 100 games, 50 games. So I'm pretty interested to see that, I guess.
All right, well, I think that the viewers have quite a list of heroes to look at heading into TI. My brain absolutely does not remember the whole list, but our niche picks, I think, are the most interesting ones to watch for, right? That sounds like Tinker, Bounty Hunter, maybe this new Shadow Fiend, Shadow Demon, Lena, maybe that Clockwork making an appearance. We'll have to see what IO does. Beastmaster, Batrider, will they be relevant? I think we've given people plenty to chew on. Again, if you have no idea who you've been listening to randomly talking about Dota for the last hour, we got Skim with the pretty purple city background, who I swear has worked with every esports company and does an amazing job in the Dota space. Ponlo is the hungry young player who's going to shove all the old guys out. Noxville is he who posts all the stats and gets them uncredited, passed around a lot, so make sure you credit Noxville. And Kips is she who has worked through so many drafting things with so many captains and convinced so many hard heads to try new things. So analyst, coach extraordinaire, that's Kips. And I have been your host, Reinessa. Thank you so much for joining us on the International Pinnacle Roundtable Talks. We'll be back for another episode soon, so make sure to check back in. Thanks for watching, everybody.